Okay, so this is the third video in our respiratory system series. It's called about respiration. If you remember the first video, we talked about the parts of the respiratory system, and they included the nose and the nasal cavity where air comes in, gets filtered and moistened. It goes into the pharynx, past the epiglottis or the glottis, down into the trachea and the windpipe. Then it branches off into the bronchi, then down into the bronchial tubes inside the lungs, and then finally it branches down to the alveoli sacs, where the actual gas exchange takes place. We also talked about two other parts of the respiratory system. They were the diaphragm, which is a large muscle underneath your lungs, and the intercostal muscles, which are between your ribs. The intercostal muscles pull the rib cage out, and the diaphragm pulls the lungs down in order to pull air into the lungs. And then we also talked about the fact that then that diaphragm relaxes, and the intercostal muscles relax and end up pushing on the lungs to push carbon dioxide out of the lungs and out of your body. And then the next video, video number 2, we talked about gas exchange. We talked about the fact that deoxygenated blood with carbon dioxide in it travels through the pulmonary artery into the pulmonary arterioles, which are tiny little pulmonary vein arteries, and then travels down to the alveoli sacs in the capillaries. And then the capillaries and the alveoli sacs are right against each other, and the carbon dioxide travels through the capillary and then through the alveoli sac through a process called diffusion. Okay? And then gets released from your body out through your respiratory system. We talked about the fact that oxygen goes into those alveolus or those alveoli sacs. It travels through the sac into the capillary, into the red blood cells in your blood, and then those red blood cells travel through your pulmonary venules or veins, the tiny ones, into your large pulmonary vein, and then back to your heart, and that gets pumped all around your body. Today we're going to talk about respiration, and that's how your body uses oxygen and glucose to actually create energy and then also create carbon dioxide as a waste product. So respiration. Respiration and breathing are not the same thing, which really stinks because every time you talk about breathing, you hear people talk about respiration, but they are not exactly the same thing. Breathing is the process of bringing oxygen into your body and releasing carbon dioxide from your body through your respiratory system. Okay? So breathing is when you breathe in air or oxygen, and then you breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, that's breathing, excuse me. Respiration is where your body takes that oxygen and it takes the glucose that you've absorbed through your small intestines, and it uses that glucose and that oxygen to actually create energy for your cells to do their functions and to live. Okay? So first of all, respiration happens in every single cell in the body. So every one of your cells needs glucose and needs oxygen in order to create energy to survive and function. Okay? And respiration is a process where sugar or glucose molecules and oxygen basically go through a chemical reaction, and by going through that chemical reaction, they create energy. Okay? So what goes into respiration? What are the reactants? Well, the reactants are basically glucose and oxygen. That's what goes in. And then the products that come out after respiration are basically carbon dioxide comes out, and water comes out, and then energy. So you end up making your own making energy. Notice carbon dioxide is a waste product, so every cell in your body does respiration. It makes energy to survive and function. That means every cell in your body produces this carbon dioxide and releases it as a waste product. Remember, all of that gets released through your capillaries into the plasma in your blood, and then it gets taken back up to your lungs where it's released out in the atmosphere. Every cell in your body also needs glucose and oxygen. Remember, the glucose gets absorbed through your small intestines into the capillaries, where it then goes into your plasma, and then it travels throughout your body and gets released into your cells again through the capillaries. And oxygen comes from your lungs into your blood, into the red blood cells in your blood, travels to your heart, and then your heart pumps that oxygen out to the rest of your body. And your organs and your cells get that oxygen through the capillaries through a process called diffusion. So that's basically respiration in a nutshell. There are two types of respiration, actually. There's aerobic respiration, which is exactly what we just talked about. It's where your body takes glucose and oxygen, does a chemical process with them, a chemical reaction, and then releases carbon dioxide and water and creates energy. This is the normal type of respiration we've been talking about all along. It's called aerobic respiration. You will need to know for Cambridge, because the goal for Cambridge says you need to know the word equation for respiration. The word equation for respiration is this first bullet right here. Glucose plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide plus water, and you also get energy. Energy is not in the word equation, though, because energy is not matter. Okay, it's not made up of atoms. It's not something you can see or touch. It is actually well, it's energy. It's a form of energy like light and heat. So it's not included in the equation, but your body does end up making it using glucose plus oxygen. You get energy, and then the waste products are carbon dioxide and water. Okay. Then there's something called anaerobic respiration. This is when your body can't get enough oxygen to make the energy that it needs at right that moment. So what your body does is it ends up making energy anyway, kind of burning everything it's got to make energy anyway, and then replenishing itself by breathing extra heavily after you're finished. Anaerobic respiration usually occurs when you exercise. So for instance, if I'm running a mile, okay, my body doesn't have enough oxygen within it to actually provide enough energy to be able to run that mile if I just breathe normally. So what my body does is it burns off all the oxygen it can possibly get, and then it causes me to start breathing very heavily to replace that oxygen. That's why if you sprint across the field, okay, by the time you get done, you're breathing very heavily. So anaerobic respiration is where your body burns off basically as much oxygen as it possibly can that's inside of it to make energy, and then you replenish that reserve of oxygen by actually breathing more heavily to make up for it. Okay, guys, don't forget aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, and you need to know this word equation for the Cambridge exam.